right, so I am Sam Doherty. I work at the college. I am also in the MBA program studying marketing. I had this class with Dr. D, who's sitting right over here, and I collected some data on the Siena basketball team, which is part of my job. I work with athletics mainly on collecting data on them for the graphics for the broadcasts, and I also work some of the broadcasts for ESPN Plus and Siena All Access. But I've been a diehard Siena basketball fan since I arrived here 3 years ago, and over the years I've also witnessed the Saints through their highs and their lows. There's some photos of Siena basketball from the past. They've had some successes, including the 2010 NCAA tournament and the 2009 tournament as well, where they beat Ohio State in overtime. If any of you remember Onion's double order, that was that game. They also won the 2014 College Basketball Invitational, and they've also had some NBA people, and people like Kenny Hasbrook and Tay Fisher was a Harlem Globetrotter, excuse me. And after a rough season, they had to change coaches again, and last year they hired Jerry McNamara from Syracuse, who brought Syracuse to March Madness in 2003. So under McNamara, it's been a tough recovery. They were 14-18 this year. Their home games were great. They had a lot of crowds back in the stands. We're trying to still get above 5,000, but we're getting there. They defeated the top seed in their conference. They beat a team by 34 points, which was their biggest win in 10 years. One of their players shot 7 3-pointers in a row, and they also played some games in double overtime, and the first 2 games of the season were also in overtime. There's some photos of McNamara and his squad from the past season. It's been an honor working with them, and they're already hard at work for the upcoming season ahead. They've also been rough on the road, which is why I started to have the question of what constitutes a good season for Siena basketball. Originally it was going to be if they're a road team or an away team, but there's a lot more at stake than just that, and I decided to make the question a lot more surfacey after I submitted the project for Dr. D. So these are some of the key factors that I included here, including location, the opponent, if the opponent was in their conference, time of the game, the day of the week, field goals, free throws, 3-pointers, changes in the score, so that includes if they tied the game and they led during the game, how many people attended the game, and of course, the win or loss. So here are the data plots I did when I was doing EDA analysis to start the project. I used JUMP, which was what we had been using in Dr. D's class before we switched to Tableau. I kind of wish I had done it in Tableau now that I think about it, but can't help timing here. Field goal percentage, they stay pretty consistent. They stay around 30 and 70%, and they do well with making baskets. The free throw line can be sketchy. They've had some games this season where they were about 100% at the free throw line, but they did have a few games where they were below that. And the 3-pointers are also sloppy. They've had a few games where they didn't shoot them at all, and you can see here they barely cracked 60%. There's also been a lot of games where they've led or trailed for most of it, but then there's been some games where the scores change constantly, and you never know who was going to come out on top. So, credit to Dr. D for helping me alter some of these graphs here. These are the win and loss percentages here. We're a losing team. That's not me being a Debbie Downer. We're a losing team. In the past 10 years, Siena has only won, I'd say, about 58% of their games at home, and they've lost 66% away, and on neutral locations, they've been pretty split down the middle. So it's a big change when you're away from home, and it makes sense. You're away from your home crowd, so it's going to be much harder to play. Doing some box plot analysis here on the results alongside attendance. They win better when the crowd is smaller, the acoustics are less. MVP Arena is also a very big arena. They have the honor of playing inside an arena, so they don't have to worry about things like sensory overload or congested space to throw the basketball around. And also, there's other pitfalls, including attendance at the different teams. They played some games at Kentucky and Kansas, and those are big basketball schools, so of course they're going to sell out. But MVP Arena barely sells out for Siena games. And most recently they played a game in a gym with 1,000 capacity, and there was only so many seatings, and it was crazy. The ball was all over the place. So mostly, like I said, wins happen in smaller acoustics. Now looking at the results, field goals do relate mostly to a win, as well as free throws and three-pointers. And also, when there's more changes in the score, a loss is more likely, but I also feel like wins can be justified by that as well. But in general, mostly losses are decided by changes in the score. And yeah, like I said, if you score more, you have a higher probability of winning. It's pretty simple. Here we go with the days of the week. In general, Siena's schedule is during the weekends when people have off from work, students have off from class, so you can ride the bus down to the arena, or if you're lucky enough, maybe Siena will make an away trip arranged for you to go watch them play on the road. They've had a few games based on out-of-conference schedules where they've had to play on like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but looking at the data here, Wednesday's the worst day for the Saints. They've only won 23% on Wednesdays in the past 10 years. And the weekends, they're, looking at the Sunday percentage, they're 50% on the losses and 49% on the wins. They're better on Saturday, 53 on the wins, 46 on the loss. And the Friday games also on the split side, but in general, 53% loss, 46% wins. So when you're playing more on days you're comfortable, you have probably a higher percentage of winning because you're used to it, and sometimes the weekday games can take you by surprise. You're not used to the schedule, so. And speaking of schedule, time of game, I collected all the different times of games from the past 10 seasons. Earliest game was at 8:30 in the morning. The latest was a 9:45 game that got delayed due to overtime at the MAC tournament. That was last year. There's somewhat of a difference, but for the most part, later times lead to a loss, and also earlier times lead to a win. Kind of makes sense because you're spending the whole night before practicing and getting enough sleep. Some of the athletes are probably in bed by the time they'd be playing basketball on the later start times. But it also depends on, people's body clocks and everything like that. You're an athlete, so you have a lot of time you need to exercise and prepare yourself. This is not the same data plot. Now I think about it. I think, is this in here? Oh, wait, never mind. This was one that Dr. D made for me that I forgot to delete. I had mine in there by accident. Anyway, moving on to opponent, because I also did Siena's conference, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, or the MAC for short. Siena's playing against teams in Buffalo and Connecticut and New Jersey, and over here we have the teams with the most losses and the most wins in the conference. 66.7% over Fairfield, and they've lost the most. This one surprised me, against Canisius. Iona's like their big rival in New York, so it's like the big team they always have to play every year, and they've actually won more, just barely, by Iona. They've also had a pretty tight loss on there as well, 61.9%. So Iona and Canisius generally are split, but Canisius I found a lot more surprising. Some of the ones I think I'm a little biased with are Merrimack, Sacred Heart, Mount St. Mary's, and Monmouth, because they were in the MAC for only a short period of time. And Sacred Heart and Merrimack just joined. Siena only played Merrimack once, and that was this season, so that was a loss. They beat Sacred Heart both times. Niagara, just looking at this now, 50% win and loss. It's the other Western New York team. And then I did partitions. And looking at the partition analysis here, this one surprised me the most. Field goal percentage is what contributes most to a win. I thought it would have been like the free throws and the three-pointers, because I remember at one point this season they were cold on the free throws and that was dooming a lot of their scores, but no, it's field goals. Because it makes sense, field goals are just the basic ways of scoring points in the basketball game. Whether you're dunking the ball or throwing the ball or laying it up or giving the and one, you're still going to contribute to the score. Then there's lead and tie changes. That's the next thing that contributes, followed by location, and then from there, if it's a neutral or home location, it's lead and tie changes. But if you're at an away place, three-point percentage is more important, which I thought was pretty cool. But still, field goal percentage, biggest contributor. And some pitfalls I had in this analysis included maybe a bigger sample size. I only did the past 10 seasons, and also I did not include anything from the 2021 season because of COVID. But, you know, Siena has not been in the tournament in 14 years, so I think probably I could have gone even further because would have kind of shown you just their current state right now, and please, for the love of God, they can come back to the NCAA tournament again. That would make my day. It would make any alum's day. I think Jerry can do it. I could have also included things like turnovers, fouls, injuries, and timeouts, because those all delay the games. Those all cause the refs to blow their whistles. So, yeah. And our source, the only source I used for this was the Siena Saints website, which I used for my data collection for the live broadcasts. All right. Any questions?
Sam, this is a really interesting study. You say you collected the data from the Siena Saints site. Is this hand-collected data?
Yes, so they all have the box scores. If you go onto their past schedules, they have all their past schedules, I think, through 2008 listed. So you can click on them, then they have the box scores, and in the box scores they have like how many people attended the game, how many times the score changed, Siena's shooting percentage from the floor versus the opponent's percentage from the floor, things like that.
But you had to go game by game.
Yep.
To build your data.
Sometimes there were games that didn't even report some of that stuff, so I had to eliminate them.
Wow.
It is the passion for analytics and sports.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Sam.